Just if you want the link, I will put this in the chat later today or later in the meeting. But you can find it right now if you go to teachingandlearning.com and click on First Steps, and then there is the PDF of the contract. You're probably aware that the association started moving towards 3-year contracts, which makes it a little easier in terms of doing updates and keeping on top of everything, because it's a pretty lengthy process just in terms of doing negotiations and so forth. So I will, Mike, if it's okay, I'll start off with the overview of the difference between the association and the Senate, and Mike will jump right into the contract. And if you had a chance to look at it, it's really lengthy, so we may not cover everything today. Mike may not cover everything in terms of the contract, but we can do a follow-up meeting. I know Mike is planning to have an association meeting as well. So sorry, my slides are moving real slow today. Here we go. So there are 2 main groups that really relate to the professional work of faculty here at the college and throughout the state of California. It's different, of course, state by state. The Academic Senate covers what we call academic and professional matters. And there are these so-called 10+1 areas in terms of collegial consultation in the state and just the role of the Academic Senate. So this really allowed more power to the faculty statewide as well as at the state level through the statewide Academic Senate. So we have these 10+1 areas that are covered. So the Senate has a very important role in any of these areas, and our college has actually included some additional areas as well. So it varies from district to district in terms of what the Senate is responsible for. But what we'll talk about today is specific to the Faculty Association. So we're a chapter through the CTA and CCA, the California Teachers Association, and the Community College Association, which is a subgroup through the CTA. So the Faculty Association covers everything that includes working conditions and benefits. So everything from our school calendar, compensation, our wages, of course, our employment, conditions related to leave, class size, health and welfare benefits, and so forth. So this is kind of key to understand if you ever have a concern in the district related to a faculty area. Probably the first step is just to figure out which is a Senate area and which is an association area. And then once you figure out that routing, it's very easy to contact either the Senate president or the association president to address that concern. So Mike Spina is our association president, and I'm going to hand it off to him. And should I stop the share, Mike? Is that what you were thinking? Okay.
We can hear you. Excellent.
Oh, great.
Yeah, it's
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Okay, so Scott talked to me about getting together and doing an overview of the contract. And so that's what I'm going to try to do now. Overview is kind of a tough word because the contract is pretty long. So there's a lot of stuff to get through. And so my general plan is this. My general plan is I have listed all the stuff. Now, I will go through it at a pretty good pace. So what I'm asking you guys to do is at any time, if you guys have any questions or want a little bit more explanation or whatever, or comment, please let me know. Please interrupt me right away, and we'll slow down at that point and take it on. I also, our contract covers both full-time and part-time faculty. So there's going to be sometimes some of the things that are going to be specific and only applicable to full-time. And there's going to be some stuff that's only applicable to part-time. And unfortunately, to some of the part-timers, it's a little bit more heavy on the full-time side. So I'm sorry about that, but that's the way the contract is right now. And so I'm going to go through it again pretty fast. And when we get to some stuff that I think is relevant to people that are here, I'll try to slow it down a little bit there and we'll go into a little more detail. But I do have, it's just a lot of stuff. And unfortunately, it's not super sexy stuff. So there's not a whole bunch of graphical stuff. I didn't get a lot of graphics in it. There's a lot of text that we're going to be going through. I don't expect us to necessarily read through all the text, but I have it all available so that if we do want to slow down and look at some of the specifics of it, we can slow down and read some of the more specifics about any section that we want to. Okay, so that's my general plan. So before we get going though, does anybody have any questions? Okay, so let's get going. So here's my general topics for today. I want to talk a little bit about the current contract information. I want to talk about the process for how do we change or create stuff in the contract. And then there's two parts of the contract. There are articles, which are a main part of the contract, and then there are appendices, which have a variety of things that are more reference based, right? So I want to go through all of the articles and the appendices. Again, pretty quickly, and please, let me know if I need to slow down or if you have any questions at any point. Okay. So a little bit about our, our current contract. Like Scott mentioned, for many years we've been going through a year-by-year contract, but then the last couple have been multi-year contracts. So our current contract is actually 2019 through 2022, a 3 academic year contract. It is available on the main HR page at the LTCC website, and there's a link, but Scott has also put that link in the chat already, which is linkable, so you could click on that if you want to follow along. I do have reference. I do have it open as well in my PDF viewer, so I can go back and reference it at any time quickly as well. The process for negotiating. So let me talk about that just real quick. The process is we start off every new contract with the existing contract, and then we negotiate changes to it, right? And so when we negotiate changes, there are 2 teams. There's a team on the faculty association side. So the faculty association side, there are a couple other team members right now. So Scott and JD are both on the negotiating team. We have a 4-person negotiating team. So the 2 negotiators that aren't with us today are Mary Cook, who specifically represents the adjunct faculty, and then also Scott Valentine is on the team. So that rounds out the 4 negotiators on our team. There's a district team. The district team right now, as far as I am not on the negotiating team, so I don't know some of the details of it. But on the district side, there are 2 negotiators that I believe are right now, which are Michelle Risden, which is the Vice President of Academic Affairs, and then Shelley Hansen, who is the Director of Human Resources. So those are the 2 teams. Each academic year or set of years, then these 2 groups get together and they negotiate, right? And when those 2 teams negotiate, when they come up with an agreement, it's called a tentative agreement, a TA. Right. So over the course of the year, there's a series of TAs that are agreed to. Right. And then at the end of that period, those TAs then are brought into a ratification of a new contract. So the ratification of the contract has to be voted on from the faculty association side, is voted on by the members. And so those members ratify it from the faculty association side, and then the board of trustees ratifies it from the district side. So I've never seen a situation where the board or the faculty association has not ratified it. Every time that I've seen it, all of my time here, so 21 years at Lake Tahoe Community College, and Scott's been here a couple more than that, it's always been ratified by both sides. But that's the process, is along the way, tentative agreements are made, and then those tentative agreements are ratified all into one, and then a new contract is created. Now, I want to talk about one more piece. It's called a memorandum of understanding. So every now and then, an issue comes up that needs to be dealt with right now. We can't wait for it to come into effect for the next contract. So a TA is not binding until it's been ratified in the next contract. But what we can do is both negotiating teams can come up and say, you know what, this came up and we can't wait for it. We need to take care of it right now. So there is a situation where it's like a TA, it's an agreement, but instead of it waiting to be ratified, it comes to effect as soon as it's signed. So every now and then this comes up. Now, this is not the process that we necessarily want. We want to have a TA. We want to have time for people to think about it. We want to have our members to be able to ratify it. But occasionally something comes up that needs to be taken care of right now. And so we can take care of it right now. And that's referred to as an agreement is called a memorandum of understanding. Okay, is everybody okay with tentative agreements, ratification, and memoranda of understanding? Okay, so I want to just quickly list, and then we'll get into the more specifics in each one of them. Okay, there are 21 articles in our contract. So many of them are kind of just like, basically just stuff that needs to be in there, a couple paragraphs long, but then there's a couple that have some really good substance, right? So here's article 1 through 11. I'm just going to name them real quick just so we see them. Recognition, employee rights, association rights, district rights. So all 4 of those are kind of fluff in there that just need to be in there. They don't really talk about too much. But then we start getting into article 5, 6, and 7. That's where the meat of our stuff is in the contract, our agreements are. And when our teams negotiate, almost all the time is spent working on articles 5, 6, and 7. Okay, instructional work days and assignments, academic personnel salary schedules, placement and advancement, and stipends. But we also, you see, have an important one is health and welfare benefits. A calendar is a really basic short one. Leaves, there's a couple things in there we'll talk about, all types of leaves. Evaluation, how faculty get evaluated. And then we have the second part of them here, grievance procedures, which again, in my time, I have almost zero experience with having any grievances, but we'll talk a little bit about that, what the process is. Retirement incentives, layoff, intellectual property rights, personnel files, negotiation procedures, notice, savings, labor management council, and agreement. So again, about Article 15 and going down after that are kind of just placeholders in there that we have some stuff in there, but it's not really referenced very often. It's not negotiated very often. It's just kind of stuff that we have to have in there. Okay, so those are the articles. I put all the appendices here on just one page. Again, these are appendices that are basically references, more specific information about processes, salary schedules, that kind of thing. Okay, so we currently have 15 appendices, and you can see them here, everything from the calendars to salary schedules, definitions, evaluation procedures, forms, faculty seniority list, department lead proposal, some memorandums of understanding that didn't get folded into the contract as a whole quite yet. So those are what the appendices are. Okay. So now what I like to do is go through each article one at a time and talk about what's in that article. And you guys have any questions along the way, please interrupt me, let me know. Okay, so some of the articles I just literally copied and pasted right from the contract because that's all it is. So here's Article 1 right now. That's all there is to Article 1. It's just recognition that we are the bargaining unit. We're part of the CCA, as Scott already mentioned, the California Community Colleges, or the Community College Association, which is part of the CTA, the California Teachers Association, and we're also affiliated with the national unit as well. So that's all there is. And it's just kind of, we had never even referenced that ever. Same thing with employee rights. This just talks a little bit about the district and the association recognize the rights of the employees to form, join, and participate in employee organizations. So basically to form a union. These are the association rights. Again, there's nothing really in there that's all that exciting. They're just rights in there that basically talk about us and how that we can come together and how that we are going to collectively bargain for the whole group. So really nothing all that exciting. District rights, so these are the rights of the district. Again, nothing all that exciting. So I'm going to kind of just gloss over these as they're almost never referenced. Okay, so this is where we start getting into the real stuff of the contract that really makes any difference for any of us. So I want to show you a couple different things. If it's a bigger article, I try to summarize it first, and then we'll have slides on the individual pieces about it. Okay. I also, just to give us a little bit of reference along the way, I have put what article we're talking about at any given time, because Article 5, 6, and 7, we're going to have several slides. And just to kind of make sure that we understand we're in Article 5, 6, or 7 at any given time, you can see down here, we're going to be talking about Article 5, instructional workdays and assignment, over the next several slides. Okay. All right. So instructional workdays and assignments. So here's the kind of the highlights of Article 5. It talks about calendar, assignments, and office hours. And for calendar, it talks about 177 days is our general contract. It talks about, so this is now, the calendar is specifically for the assignment for a full-timer. But when we get into assignments, you can see that there's a couple different sections. There's full-time assignments, adjunct assignments, and then there are special and types of faculty employees that we call out specifically for assignments. We talk about work experience instructors, the librarian, director of library, counselors, some non-teaching faculty members, and the director of the Disability Resource Center. Okay, so those are the things that are the different assignments that are called out in Article 5. Okay, so I've already talked about the calendar, so we're going to go directly into now assignments. But the calendar is 175 instructional and flex days. One of those is specific to convocation, right? So for convocation, that's one of those flex days, but we have 175 instructional days per year as a full-time faculty. And then we have 2 multi-purpose professional activity days that are part of that round out that 177. Okay, assignments. So I'm going to talk about full-time assignments first. There's 2 general full-time. There's credit and there's non-credit. So I'm going to kind of gloss over the non-credit because we don't have a non-credit full-timer here anymore. For a couple of years, we had a full-time non-credit ESL instructor, but not anymore. So when I get to that slide, I'm just going to kind of gloss right over it. Okay, so here is the assignment for a full-timer. Okay, for a full-timer, this is the general full-time teaching faculty member. Our assignment is basically characterized in the contract as a 40-hour work week. And that is broken down into these 4 areas. We have 16 weekly contact hours. Sometimes it's also referred to as WTCH. And we kind of use it interchangeably with units, right? They're technically not units, but we use it in layman's terms interchangeably with units. Okay, so we teach 16 units or 16 weekly contact hours. Okay, so theoretically 16 contact hours a week, 5 office hours we're required to do every week, right? One of the stipulations is it's supposed to be over 4 different days. And then with those 16 units or 16 contact hours, there's an expectation that we're putting in about 16 hours of prep. And 16 hours of prep includes a variety of things, including SLOs, professional development, and curriculum. Okay, so all those are encapsulated or included in those 16 hours of prep. And then what rounds it out is 3 hours of college service. And what does college service mean? College service means stuff like meetings, committees, peer evaluations, and other professional duties. Okay, so all those to get together, 16 plus 5 plus 16 plus 3 rounds out a 40-hour work week. Okay, so that's basically what our assignment is on a weekly basis. Credit's a little bit different. They count them a little bit different, but I'm going to gloss over that for right now. Now that was for kind of what a week looks like. There's also an assignment what a full-timer is required to do for the entire work year, right? So for the entire work year, our obligation is 48 units or 48 weekly contact hours generally over 3 quarters. And those 3 quarters include, for most people, fall, winter, and spring. But we're seeing over the last couple of years that's changed a little bit. But for a longest time, it was almost all faculty, full-time faculty, were teaching their 3 main quarters were fall, winter, and spring. Again, that's changed a little bit with a couple of faculty members that we've hired recently. There's been a difference in that. Some are asked to work during the summer and then have one of the other quarters off. So units over 48 for the year will be compensated at the overload rate. The overload rate is the adjunct rate, is the adjunct pay rate. Okay, so we'll get to the specifics of the pay rates in just a little bit when we get to salary. Faculty who teach less than 48 shall be required in the spring to perform professional duties equal to relieving their workload deficiency. So for example, if I didn't have enough classes scheduled or one of my classes didn't go, when it comes to spring, if I don't have 48 by the end, then I'm going to be required to do something else to make up and have to do overload in the spring to make sure that I have at the end the equivalent of 48 units or 48 weekly contact hours. So there is the option for a 12-month teaching load. Okay, so again, it's not necessarily common, but it does happen. So, for example, what that means is some full-time faculty members can teach in the summer and use that as part of their 48 full year load. Okay, so for example, I'm one of those faculty members right now. Um, there's not enough classes right now in PE for me scheduled and me to get a full load during the year. So I have asked to teach a nutrition class during the summer and count that as load. But there's a couple things about that. One thing is it's a year-to-year thing. So just because I did it one year doesn't mean that I can do it every year. Every time that I want to try to do that, I have to ask the president specifically for permission. I have to get permission from the president specifically, and it's a year-to-year basis. It may be counted toward those 48, and I must request it at least 3 weeks prior to the start of class. Those are the stipulations. It has to be approved by the president, and it has to be requested at least three weeks prior to the class starting. Okay, so again, many of us, that's not going to be an issue, but if you do want to teach during the summer and count that load during the 4-year 48 obligation, you have to get that permission from the president at least 3 weeks prior. Now, I will talk about then, if you do teach, if a full-timer does teach during the summer without this stipulation, without permission or without a request, that does not count towards your 48, and you will be paid at the adjunct faculty rate. Okay. Okay, here's another thing that's been added just recently, just this past year, I believe, and that is maintaining core shells. So in the faculty assignment Article 5, this was added in last year, or maybe the year before. And that is, so actually it hasn't been actually folded into the contract. It was an MOU from last year. So it says now that every course at the college will publish and maintain a Canvas shell, regardless if you're doing online, EVE, or face-to-face. It is a requirement now in the contract that we have a Canvas shell. Right. Yes, and I see in the chat, Scott said it was a result of COVID-19 because we had to turn on the dime, and all of a sudden at the end of spring we were going from a mix of all types of delivery methods to having to go all online, right? And so I think one of the things the administration of the district wanted was all of us to be prepared for that in the future. So if ever that happens again, that we'll be able to go right into a distance education mode whenever we need be in the future. Okay, and so there's a couple specifics about that Canvas shell. That Canvas shell has to have, it says in there specifically, it has to have these 5 components. It has to have a syllabus. It has to have an assignment calendar. It has to have ways to communicate with the instructor and the peers. It has to have ways for students to stay updated on their progress in the class, so basically like a grade book. And it has to have standard language regarding available student services. So right now, basically, it's going to have like a link to and a little overview to like Cranium Cafe, right? That's probably the easiest way to check off that last. Faculty are expected to access and complete appropriate training to be prepared to teach online. So we are basically now expected to know how to use Canvas. Okay, it used to be, so before this, it used to be that we were encouraged to, and we got a stipend to get trained and be trained on Canvas. That's no longer the case. When this MOU came out just recently, it created these stipulations, along with it took away any stipend for getting trained, and now it requires us to be ready to be using Canvas. Another thing in the assignments article is class size limits. So these are the class size limits right here. This applies to everybody, right? No matter who you're teaching or where or when. It is face-to-face. It is 40 students. I'm going to put that with a grain of salt because 40 students is the maximum class size, except the exception is your classroom. If your classroom has a smaller capacity than that, then the class size will obviously be smaller. So those are the 2 things that cap a face-to-face class, or either classroom size, but if it's not classroom size, then 40 is the limit for face-to-face. Now online includes EVE, totally online, or any of those other hybrid type is 35 students. Okay, 35 students is the max for online. Now, there are exceptions to those first two rules, and that is there's two exceptions. English composition classes have a limit of 25 students, and these specific math classes limited right here, and you can see those have the class size limit right next to the class number. All right, class limit size.
Can I just ask a question? I'm just curious, what is Math 152?
Math 152 is, I believe, is pre-algebra, is the first class of pre-algebra. Does anybody else have a, I don't know for sure, but
Okay, no worries. I was just curious why it
okay.
has all those
Yeah.
substance.
And so I'm not sure, I don't know the rationale behind the math classes. I do know the rationale for the English composition is just because the sheer amount of papers and grading that goes along with reading all those papers. So I understand the rationale of that. I don't know the rationale in the math classes.
I don't know that I can answer that, but since I'm English, but it strikes me that the math classes, most of those listed, with the exception of Math 201, are basic skills courses. And so they are kept at low enrollment to allow for more teacher-student interaction.
Yeah,
So.
that makes sense. That's probably the good rationale right there. Okay, excuse me. So now we're going to go into some more information about assignments. Okay, so I want us to make sure that we understand the distinction between Article 5 assignments and Article 7, which is stipends. So Article 7 is assignments, and one of the big things about assignments is you can see I've underlined it in that first paragraph right there. It's a concept called right of assignment. And so the district retains right of assignment. That means the dean and the vice president can assign us as teachers to whatever class that they want to, right? We don't get to pick what classes we're going to teach. We can, from a procedural standpoint, we could say, I'm going to schedule myself for these classes. But the bottom line is the dean and the vice president can say, no, you're not going to teach that class. You're going to teach this class over here. And you're not going to teach that section of class. You're going to teach this section of class. And so the district has total right of assignment. Right. So even though it's most of the time it's collegial and we come up with our schedules, at any time they can say, no, you're not teaching that class, or yes, you're going to teach this class over here. Okay. So I want to make sure that's a big concept right here. The district retains right of assignment. Okay. So like I said, normally it works out fine and we schedule ourselves for our classes and that's what they're okay with. But at any time they can override that. And and assign us to teach anything that we have minimum quals to teach. They can't assign me, for example, to teach psychology or sociology, for example, but they can assign me to teach computer science. They can assign me to teach computer applications, and they can assign me to teach any PE or health class. Those are my minimum quals that I have. Okay. Here's a couple other things, a couple of facts about assignments. So 8 units for a full-timer can be carried over from year to year. So we already talked about 48 are the obligation that we have. If we teach more than 48, like I said earlier, we will be compensated at the adjunct faculty rate. If we don't want to be compensated at the adjunct faculty rate, we can actually carry over up to 8 units from school year to school year. So if I'm at 52 this year, that means I have 4 extra. I could either at the end of the year cash those out at the adjunct faculty rate, or I could carry those over to the next school year, and I'll start off my new running total with 4 before fall even starts. Okay, but 8. Now, Scott put a thing in a note in the chat. For the longest time, it used to be only 4, but about a year or 2 ago, they increased that to 8. So we could carry over 8. Okay. Faculty may be assigned certain duties and receive workload credit for these duties. Other faculty assignments resulting in workload credit shall be negotiated. So if there are assignments outside of teaching in your minimum qual areas, if the district wants to assign you to a non-teaching assignment, it has to be negotiated with it has to be either in the contract as an option, or it has to be negotiated. They can't just go, okay, Mike, you're going to go research a new sport. and we're going to give you 3 units for it, right? So if it's not on the contract already, they can't just ask you to do something that's not on the contract. It has to go through negotiations as far as assignments are concerned, okay? There are some assignments that are already listed in the contract, like some directors. So for example, there's a fitness education center, gets a quarter time release for fitness education center. The wilderness education director gets a 25% release time. The athletic director gets 20 units out of the 48 released to do their duties. And the director of distance education, even though it says 50% in here, there's an MOU over the past year that I think Treva was released for 100% of her time for. So that was an MOU that overrode this. But currently in the contract right now, with the exception of that MOU, I think that was only for a 1-year trial basis. And I think it's going to sunset anyways, because I think that we're going to hire a full-time distance education coordinator anyways.
Mike,
Yes.
quick question.
Yeah.
So do the MOUs just exist in perpetuity as it's documented, it's out there until it's changed, or does it ever become part of the contract if people choose to make it part of the contract, or what? I mean,
So I've seen it. So usually it gets folded into the contract at the next time that the contract gets ratified. Usually, but I also have seen MOUs that have a specific, what we call a sunset date. So it will only be a trial period. So for example, I think there's an MOU that we'll talk about coming up, that Scott's position right now, the director of teaching and learning, is that the faculty chair of teaching and learning, as well as the 100% release time for the distance education, are both MOUs that have a sunset date. I think that they're both of them have either a 1 or 2 year trial period, and so they have specifically end dates on those.
Okay.
Normally, if they don't have end dates, they get folded in the contract the next time the contract is ratified.
Okay, I was just wondering, because you could end up over a period of time collecting a whole bunch of those that are just floating around out there that someone has to monitor.
Yes, exactly. And so normally they get folded in, but occasionally they do, and so it will be in the language of the MOU that it will be sunset at some specific date or time period.
Thanks.
Okay, so here we go. Adjunct faculty, Solange and Francis, here you go. So this is what it talks about faculty assignments in Article 5. Now, some of it's going to be a little hard to see because it's not what we want it to be, but it's the way it is right now. So a couple of things. First of all, adjunct faculty may not teach more than 67% of the hours considered to be full-time assignment for a regular faculty member. And that's in the contract, but it's just referenced in the contract because it's part of educational code. So we don't necessarily have to have it in the contract, but I think we just put it there to make sure everybody understands it. It is part of educational code and it's referenced right there. So that's at the state level that's mandating that 67%. So the district, in consultation with the department lead, where appropriate, well, so this next section is talking about pseudo, what's the word I'm looking for? Almost like seniority, or how we're going to try to keep an adjunct to be employed over continuous or several, basically continued employment as an adjunct. So the bottom line is adjunct faculty have no guarantee of continued employment. That's the bottom line, right? So this is what's currently in the contract for the language. So where appropriate, we'll consider the following when determining course assignments for and rehiring of part-time temporary faculty, including but not limited to. So again, this is not hard language. This is just saying that these are the things that we should take in consideration when continuing employment for an adjunct faculty member. The length of time served, the number of courses taught, the evaluations, demonstrated professionalism, part-time temporarily faculty members' adherence to the regular and timely completion of associated duties, and the availability, willingness, and expertise of part-time temporary faculty to teach specific courses or fulfill specific assignments. So unfortunately for adjunct faculty, that is not hard language. That is just basically saying that the dean and the faculty lead are going to take these into consideration, but they can take other things into consideration as well. There's just basically the bottom line is there's no guarantee of continued employment. It also says this explicitly. Again, this for adjuncts, this is going to be a little hard to see. In all cases, part-time faculty assignments shall be temporary in nature, contingent on enrollment and funding, and subject to program changes and department needs. No part-time faculty member shall have reasonable assurance of continued employment at any point, irrespective of status, length of service, reemployment preference of that part-time temporary faculty member. So this is more on the other side. It's explicitly saying there's no assurance of continued employment. And then we get into work experience instructors. There's not a work experience instructor here. So you guys can, if you want to, look at work experience instructors assignments. The director of library and media services specifically talk about their work year, their assignment. But again, the librarian's not here. I don't see any counselors here. So I'm going to skip counselors as well. So non-teaching faculty members. So Scott is a non-teaching faculty member right now. The work year, assuming a flex calendar, the school year for a full-time non-teaching faculty member should commence on September 1st and end June 30th and shall consist of 177 days. The 174 days outside of the 3 flex days shall be distributed throughout the work year by mutual consent between the faculty member and the district. The assignment is 40 hours per week of assigned responsibilities, including teaching, college service, and comparable professional duties. Okay, so that's what it says for non-teaching faculty members. We don't have the director of the DRC here today, so I'm going to skip over this. We'll get into office hours. So office hours have some information about it for both full-time and for part-time. So full-time faculty members are required to do office hours. Part-time or adjunct faculty members can request and get paid additional for doing doing office hours. And here's what it says for full-timers. Full-timers are required to do 5 office hours a week over at least 4 days of that week. They must be submitted to the instruction office no less than 4 weeks prior to the start of the quarter. Office hours for online instruction. So this is a little bit newer one because of changing times. But office hours for online instruction and for the incarcerated student program may be conducted the same ratio of course hours to office hours to face-to-face courses. Meaning, if I do a quarter of my load online compared to face-to-face, then I can do a quarter of my office hours online. Okay, and so it can be a ratio, but there is one actual more stipulation. So right now, I know most of us are doing almost all of our time online, but somewhere in the contract, it still says though, that at least 50% of the office hours must be on campus. So that's not applicable to right now because of quarantine, but we might want to think about changing this in the future because of just the changing times. But currently in the contract, it says at least half of them, no matter if you're teaching totally online, at least half of them have to be done on campus, is what it says. Okay, that's for full-timers. For adjunct faculty members, adjunct instructors are not required to have scheduled office hours, but paid office hours may be requested. Okay, you must be currently teaching at least 3.2 units to be eligible to get office hours as an adjunct. This is the eligibility is this. There's 3 ways to be eligible. You can either be nominated by a full-time faculty member, you can be solicited by the dean, or you can choose to apply yourself. Okay, all 3 of those situations though, you still have to fill out the application form. And then after Tim.
There we go. Unmute. On the unit value, 3.2 units, a lot of our physical education classes may be a smaller unit value. I'm just thinking of yoga. And we actually had I think an instructor in that class asked for an office hour and it was granted by the dean. So that was under 3.2 units. So is that, maybe it was a one-off or can it be negotiated that way, or does it have to be with 3.2?
So I don't know what happened there specifically. Okay. I would guess it's more of a one-off.
Okay.
But I would think that the district can use it as a leverage to say, no, we don't want to give you the office hours. Okay. So right now it's in the contract that way, and maybe we should consider changing that to a little bit lower rate so that it gets some of our instructors that teach a class that's less than that 3.2 threshold. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's something we should consider.
Okay, thanks.
So
in the
the dean,
past-
though, go ahead, Sean.
I was just saying, I think in the past we've had, at least when I started as an adjunct here, we had more applicants than we had funding for those hours or something along those lines. And so it was on a, you had to apply, and then, more units you were teaching, the more likely you were to get the office hours.
Got it.
And I believe that's the same situation here, because the next bullet point is with everybody, after everybody applies, the dean will select from those applicants. And I'm not sure, it's not clear about what the criteria is. So my hunch is it's two things. It's probably based on funding, on how much funding they have to give to paid office hours. But I would imagine too that gives them, the district and the dean, the ability to have whatever criteria they want to deny somebody that as well. So I think that we should be a little more specific in the contract about what the criteria is that the dean's going to use for choosing those applicants.
Hey, Mike, real quick, I could say on that, because that was part of a discussion, I think 2 years back. Jeff asked some question. There was conversation at the SLT level about this. There is a form, and I was at a meeting where there was a question, is this form relevant? So the association may want to look at that application form, because it does list some of those criteria, but we might disagree with, because you get to an issue of what if a class is brand new and those students really need it versus a long-standing class. So you do get into comparing apples and oranges a little bit, which could be a concern. So we just might want to put that on our radar for looking at this in the future.
I think you're right. I think we need to have a little more clarity there on what those criteria could be. So again, the dean's going to select those who will get those office hours, and then the pay rate for adjuncts that do have the adjunct instructors that do have office hours is 50% of the lecture rate. And so I went and cross-referenced that with our salary schedule. So that's currently $25.07 an hour for office hours for adjunct employees. One more, I just want to have a note that I think that wraps up Article 5, but one note here is the Faculty Association is trying to get the job duties and responsibilities of all the assignments listed in the contract. Right. So, for example, right now, the Fitness Education Center, director of the Fitness Education Center, it says they'll get 25% release time, but there's not necessarily a list of those job duties or responsibilities. So we want to get those listed in there, so it's totally clear to both sides, not just for the faculty side, but also for the district. Everybody knows what their responsibilities are. Everybody knows what they might be evaluated on. Everybody knows exactly what's going on because it's listed explicitly in the contract. So that's one note for Article 5. Okay, so let's go on to Article 6. Does anybody have any questions about Article 5 before we go on to Article 6? Okay, so that wraps up assignments, and we're going to go on to Article 6, which is salary schedules, placement, and advancement. Okay, so some of the highlights in Article 6 are the salary schedules. There are, I believe, 4 full-time faculty salary schedules and 1 adjunct salary schedule. And all of those are actually not in Article 6. They're just referred to in Article 6. They are appendices. So we'll look at those in just a sec. Placement. So this article also talks about how you're initially placed on the salary schedule as a full-timer. And as a part-timer, excuse me. It talks about full-time salary advancement. So how do you advance once you get on the salary schedule as a full-timer, and also placement and advancement as a adjunct faculty member. So those are the main points then in Article 6. Okay, and so just a couple of quick things about, first of all, the full-time salary schedule. It is a kind of a matrix look to it, where it has steps and columns. Yeah, steps and columns. So rows and columns, basically, to this matrix, to this like spreadsheet, if you will. The adjunct salary schedule has 2 different aspects to it. It has quarters worked, or they call them tiers, and it's quarters worked at LTCC. So you're either at below 9 quarters or over 9 quarters. Those are the 2 tiers on an adjunct faculty scale. And then the second piece of the adjunct faculty schedule is 3 different titles. There's a lecturer adjunct, lecturer associate, and lecturer associate 2. Okay, so here's an example right now. I'm going to bring up the adjunct faculty salary schedule first. And it's a fairly, it all fits on one page. I cut off the bottom of it because I wanted to make it big enough so it's clear. The bottom of it has some special assignments for some coaches and that type of thing. So since there aren't any coaches here, I don't feel all that bad. So that's the only part I cut off here on the adjunct faculty schedule. But this is the adjunct faculty schedule. Again, you can see there's 2 tiers, less than 9 quarter or 0 to 9 quarters at LTCC and 10 plus quarters at LTCC. Those are the 2 big distinctions there. And then we have 3 different titles. You come in as an adjunct faculty, but you can go through the process and become an associate faculty or associate faculty 2. And I'll talk about that process here coming up in just a sec. Okay. But you can see there are per unit rates and per hour rates. Okay. And then there's a couple other credit assignments that are outside regular teaching. There's laboratory. Now, laboratory, there's a distinction between teaching lecture and laboratory for adjunct faculty. So the lecture units are based on these numbers up here. But if you teach lab units are paid at 85% of the lecture unit, okay, for an adjunct instructor. There's a pay for substitute lecture, substitute laboratory, proctors, and then some specific other ones for part-time counselors, part-time DRC, part-time librarian. Okay. This is again, I think there's 3 or 4 full-time ones, depending on how many days. So most faculty teach a 177-day contract, but there's also like a 200-day contract and a 214-day contract. So I think we have 3 full-time faculty salaries. So this one is 177, excuse me. And really, when you get into 200 or 214, it's proportional. So if you take 177 divided by 200, it'll be that percentage increase to the 200 day or the 214 day. So again, for the full-timer, you can see we have columns based on education and degrees, and we have steps that are determined by your experience. Okay, so placement. So first I'll talk about placement of full-timers, then we'll talk about placement of adjunct. Placement of full-timers is based on a couple different things: teaching or work experience. But currently, the way it is right now, it's only full-time years of experience that will be counted. So if you have part-time experience currently right now, part-time experience, no matter how many years you have of part-time experience, it doesn't count for your placement on the full-time faculty schedule. There are placement limitations. So we can look those up specifically. Yeah, Julie, I'm sorry. That's a bummer for you. I know that you recently got hired on the full-time list and you had a whole bunch of part-time experience that did not was not appreciated. So I'm sorry for that. So we're working on that. So I'll take a side note. That is one of the items that the Faculty Association is working on and proposing to change this year, is to try to get some appreciation and counting of part-time experience for your placement on the salary schedule for full-timer. Okay. Again, the columns on the salary schedule are based on education and degrees. For full-timers to advance, every year, a full-timer advances 1 step because basically it's another year of experience. So that step's going down. And then if you want to, you could go across in the columns by doing salary advancement with accumulating units of education. Okay, so there are some criteria in the contract for what those units are, what those units can be. But one more thing that we have to keep in mind is those columns are based right now, are labeled with semester units. And so if you take units that are quarter-based units, you have to do the conversion. So basically, you need 1.5 quarter units to equal 1 semester unit. Okay, that's the conversion right there. The process is, once you get enough to go to a next column, you have to, as a full-timer, you have to request it. The request has to be in by April 1st in the preceding year for that salary advancement to become effective. And that goes to a salary advancement committee. That committee is made up of 3 full-time faculty members, the area administrator, meaning the dean, and the HR director. That committee then will determine on if your units meet the criteria for you to use and go to the next column. Okay. One more thing about the columns before I go. That's another thing right now. Those columns are big amounts of units to get from one column to the next. So the Faculty Association is also putting together a proposal to reduce the amount of units for getting to the next column. Okay, so we'll see if that goes through in the next round of negotiations. Okay, so adjunct faculty. So adjunct faculty, again, get placed on the first tier because when you first get hired at LTCC, you have less than 9 quarters at LTCC. So it's going to be, you're going to be in the tier 1 and you're going to be on the adjunct faculty. Now to go across those columns, if you will, there's a program, there's an associate faculty program. And in order to achieve status of associate faculty, all the following criteria must be satisfied. There are three bullet points here. You have to complete at least 24 units teaching at LTCC. That's the first criteria. The second criteria is completing some training. And the third criteria is an observation, is an evaluation observation. Those 3 criteria must be met. Now, the training, there's a variety of training that are available for adjunct faculty. You don't have to do any one of these specifically. You can do any of these right here, right? There's ETW, EOTW, Foundational Skills Apprenticeship Program, ISW and ATW. I think ISW and ATW have been phased out. These are still left in there for some people that have taken those training in the past. These are the 2 trainings really that have taken their place: the Excellence in Training Workshop or the online Excellence in Training Workshop. Those are the 2 trainings that meet that criteria of the second step right there. The second bullet point.
That Foundational Skills Apprenticeship Program, I don't think we have that any longer.
Yeah, I don't even know what that is, because I was aware of what the ATW and the ISW were, but I have no idea what that skills apprenticeship workshop. So really what we're talking about here, I think for current adjuncts, if you haven't completed this step yet, I think it's going to be A or B. So I think you're right, Julie. And then finally, the satisfactory classroom evaluation after these other ones have been met. Okay. That's how you get from adjunct faculty to associate faculty. And it's basically the same type of thing for going to the 3rd level, the associate 2 faculty. The following criteria, completion of the criteria for, first of all, you have to be at the second column before you get to the 3rd column. That's the first criteria. The second one is complete 12 additional units of teaching at LTCC after you've become the associate faculty. And third is the completion of the advanced excellent teaching workshop. Okay, and then compensation for participation in any of those trainings that we talked about. Adjunct faculty will be paid $125 stipend for their participation. Attendance is voluntary, and the completion of the program will help advance the adjunct faculty to the adjunct salary schedule based on the requirements for such advancement. Okay, so adjunct faculty do get paid. It's pretty low. It's a pretty low amount, but you do get paid for going to those trainings that are part of that advancement criteria. Okay, that kind of rounds out Article 6. So let me go on to Article 7, and so I'm gonna ask a question real quick, Scott. I don't mind going beyond the 1 o'clock mark. So if you guys want to stay on, if you have time and you're interested, I'll continue to go the rest of the way through. And if you want to, I think Scott's going to be recording this, as well as if you want to come back and ask me questions at any time, you can do that as well. But I think I'm just going to continue to go on. And if you guys can stay on with me, great. If you got to go off and do something else, that's excellent too. And we'll catch up with you later. So I'm gonna go on to then Article 7. So this is another one of the big ones too. So I really want to make sure we understand the difference between Article 5 is what is assignments and what the district and the administration can assign us to do, and Article 7 is stipends. Because I'm gonna define it here in just a sec. But these are the highlights for Article 7. Definition of what a stipend is, and this is really important. I'm going to get back to this in just a sec. We talk about some of the coordinators that are listed already. The mentoring the program is in Article 7. Course creation stipend, online education initiative course approval, and course ISP tutoring, ISP video creation, grading by exam, club advisors, academic senate, chairs of standing committees, department lead units, adjunct faculty orientation, curriculum development by adjunct faculty travel stipend, release time for faculty association duties, travel for correctional facilities, and other stipends. So all these things right there are in Article 7, right? Some of them are much smaller pieces than others, but that's kind of an overview of all the things in Article 7. So let's talk now about, I want to define what stipend is, because this is, in my opinion, super important. So a stipend is payment for work performed by full-time and adjunct faculty that are, this is the important part, outside of the regular academic assignment. So again, this gets important because you cannot be assigned to do one of these things specifically, right? These are for work performed that is outside regular academic assignment. Okay, so that's a big distinction between Article 5 and Article 7. So there's some coordinators. I don't know if any coordinators here, so I'm going to kind of gloss over this, but it calls out the Kokanee literary magazine editor, the writer's series, the art gallery coordinator. It talks about how much they're going to get. Mentoring program for new faculty. It talks about how much not only the mentee, but the mentor are going to get. So you can see that a mentor gets 1 unit and a mentee gets 4 units during the first teaching quarter. Course creation stipend. So this is part of the MOU. This isn't actually part of the contract. This is a separate MOU right now that will be folded into the contract. So this really came about when all of a sudden we had to go to, because of COVID, and everybody had to get to change their courses over to EVE and to totally online and create the Canvas shells, right? So I think the district wanted to show some appreciation for the workload that goes into changing your course over from a traditional face-to-face course into a online version of the course. Okay, so here's some of the numbers right here, right? So you can get a stipend. There's a formula, right? And it's based on a number times the number of units that course is, right? So for a 4-unit course, it's going to be $125 times 4, right? So what's that, $500? So basically you get $500 for changing over a face-to-face class over to an EVE class. That's this first area right here. You can also do, you get a $500 stipend for changing a course over to a totally online class or to a correspondence course, which means like an ISP version of the course as well. So if you're the first one to create a course that what didn't exist before in the form of an EVE, ISP, or online, you can request a stipend for it, right? And the stipend again is $125 times the number of units. Now, that comes with a little bit, that's not just straight up. There's a little bit of a string attached to that. Okay, and I want to show that as well. This is just another one of those versions. So hybrid also is another situation. But this is the statement I want to cover. Once any payment has been received from the district reserves the right to transfer course materials, including the Canvas shell, to any other faculty member. You have no say over that anymore. So if you get that stipend, if you take on that money for creating that course, that means that you were paid from the district specifically to do that. And as soon as they pay you specifically to do that, they get rights. You don't necessarily give up rights, meaning you can use that and go to another school and use that just fine. Oh, but it also means that they have rights to it and they can give that shell to anybody else at the college. Okay. And so I just want to make sure everybody understands those rights then. Tim.
And that to me represents a really big issue when it comes to adjunct faculty, because they have no rights to their job quarter to quarter. So we could hire somebody who's really good at developing course materials to do it once, and then hire somebody who's better in the classroom, and give them the material with no, but yeah, it's an intellectual property issue. But with what we're saying here is basically that we're giving the district all of those rights if you take that stipend. And unfortunately, because our adjuncts in general are paid so little, they have the least leverage. They can't a lot of times just say no to taking that stipend. They need the money. So to me, that has the adjuncts over a barrel in a way that I'm not comfortable with.
It does, and actually, so Solange and I had some conversations about this last quarter as well, because I have reservations about it, even from a full-time perspective, right? So by no means are we anywhere close to the risk that an adjunct faculty member is, but I still I have a couple things. Personally, I don't think it's anywhere close to the amount of money that appreciates how much time and effort that it takes to do that. And secondly, I have no problem sharing it with anybody, but I don't want the district just to be able to give it to anybody whenever they want to. So in my opinion, I actually, personally, I refused that stipend. I explicitly wrote to the instruction office and said, do not give me that stipend. I do not want that stipend. Now, that's a personal thing, so I don't expect everybody to do that, and I don't counsel everybody to do that, but I do counsel everybody to at least think about it. Yes, there's for sure, for the adjunct employee, there's much more risk to it than to a full-timer. And it should be considered when taking that stipend. Some other stipends that are listed in the stipends article, everything from online education initiative course. So you can get your course basically like certified, if you will. And if you go through that process, you can get a stipend for that. There are some stipends for tutoring for ISP. There's some stipends for creating videos for ISP. There's stipends for grading the basically like the, what do they call it? The examination, what do they call them? Credit for examination, basically, right? Credit for examination. So there's, for example, like Spanish. I know Spanish department does a variety. You can test out, or you can try to take a credit exam for Spanish 101, 102, 103, and maybe even the 201 series as well. Can't remember for sure, but someone's got to grade those. Now, it does specifically say that if you're a department chair, sorry, those are part of your duties. But if you're not a department chair, you can get a stipend for it. Or if you're an adjunct faculty member, or if you are a full-time faculty member that does it during the summer, you can get a stipend for it. But it explicitly does say that if you're a department lead, you are responsible for doing those grading those. Club advisors, there's a stipend for club advisors. There's a stipend for some of the Senate officers. You can see it right there. 12 units a year for the president, 3 for the vice president, 3 for secretary, and even 1 for the past president to make that transition happen. There's only one example of chairs of standing committees. Right now, 1 unit is given for the curriculum committee chair. Department lead. So this one's always kind of a weird one as well. So department lead units will be assigned. So I want everybody to understand this as well. This is a really big one, and this is an important piece of the contract, and important piece of the language. So for full-timers, you can be asked or even expected to be a department lead in your department. But I was very explicit. I was on the negotiating team when this language was developed, and I was very explicit about saying it has to be mutual agreement. You cannot be told to be the department chair, and on the other side of the coin, you can't be department chair just because you want to be. Both sides, it has to be mutual agreement for somebody to be assigned the department chair duties, department lead units. Okay, but both sides have to agree. So if you do not want to do it, you do not have to do it. Now, there's pros and cons to that. right? When you're the department lead, you have a little bit more control about what's going on in your department. You have a little bit more control about making the schedule and having some say in the instructors that are going to be teaching the classes, that kind of stuff. So if you're not the department lead and you want to get and not do those responsibilities and duties, then you also give up some of that control as well. So there's pros and cons. Now, so in this article, it also identifies how many units each individual department lead will get, and they're variable. It is not the same for every department lead, right? And so there's a formula-based calculation, and it's based on these types of things. It's based on the number of part-time employees you have in your department. It's based on the number of courses that you offer every year. It's based on the number of lab contact hours and facilities that you have in your department as well. So there's a big formula-based one, and we can get into the details of it at some other point, but it is a formula-based calculation for every department. And here's another thing too, is adjustments are going to be made on a regular basis because departments fluctuate with number of part-timers, with number of courses, with facilities, and all those things. So every so often it gets reassessed and back into that formula. Okay. Stipends for adjunct faculty. So there's a couple different pages here, but stipends for adjunct faculty. Adjunct faculty members of committees can get stipends for the actual time spent in committee meetings. They're compensated at the amount equal to 1/2 of the adjunct hourly rate. So I think I showed that before. The adjunct hourly rate is going to be somewhere around $50-something. So I think about 50% of that was in the neighborhood of about $27 an hour is what the adjunct faculty rate is for stipends for working on committees. Adjunct faculty members also get a stipend for attending faculty orientation. And so in the contract, it talks about adjunct faculty are required to participate in an orientation, either face-to-face or online, once per year to be introduced to and updated on district policies and procedures. Oh, there it is right there, $27 for a 1-hour orientation. Okay. There's also a couple other options for stipends for adjunct faculty. Adjunct faculty can get stipends for developing curriculum. So for writing course outlines or proposing course outlines, there's two types of curriculum. There's either coming up with new courses or doing modifications to existing courses. So you can see that there's a formula base on how much the stipend will be, but it's about twice as much for doing a new course as it is for modifying a course proposal. Okay?
Mike,
yes.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Does the modification apply to ISP?
I would assume that it would be for any modification. It doesn't specifically say that. Now, when I'm talking about curriculum, I'm talking about submitting through eLumen the course outline of record. So not necessarily. So that's different. That's different than actually doing the course materials.
Okay.
So this is modifying the course outline of record. Is what's referred to by curriculum development, not the actual course materials.
Okay, thank you.
And there's also an adjunct faculty travel stipend. So if you're teaching face-to-face and you travel more than 50 vehicle miles one way, then there's a stipend. It says if you meet once a week, you can get $400 stipend. If you meet twice a week, $800 stipend. And if you meet 3 or more days a week, you get a $1,200 stipend for the quarter. Okay, so those are for adjunct employees that travel to come to the campus. Some other stipends that are outlined in the contract include release time for faculty association duties. Real quickly, there are 6 units given to the faculty association for negotiators and or faculty association officers. Those could be distributed however the faculty association wants to. And then there's also one more thing that those 6 have to be purchased. So they're not given, they're purchased. So the faculty association can buy 6. Actually, they can purchase from the district a maximum of 6, and then the district will match those. So if the faculty association buys 6, they can get actually 12 units to distribute to the officers and negotiators over the year. Travel for correctional facilities, travel time to be paid at $100 per round trip to the Susanville location, and travel time to be paid at $62 round trip to the Folsom location.
Hey, Mike.
Yes.
Back to the release time for faculty association. We know you guys don't get enough. What would it take for us to, for the faculty to put in money to get 6 units for you guys?
So I think we're discussing that right now as the officers and negotiators. So we're trying to figure out right now what our ongoing budget is, what our sustainable budget is with the people that we have right now, and then what we'll have to raise to get a sustainable budget so that we can basically buy more units per year. So I guess we're working on that right now.
Okay.
And then after we figure out the budget implications of that, then my plan is to send out a request to the membership to see if we can get some more money on a regular basis to that fund.
Okay, great. Yeah, let us know.
Okay, excellent. Thanks. And then in the contract, it also talks about stipends that are not defined specifically in the contract. So for stipends less than the amount equivalent to 4 units at the adjunct faculty rate, a description of duties will be developed and maintained. The stipend amount will be determined through mutual agreement between the supervising administrator and the person who received the stipend. If mutual agreement cannot be reached, the stipend amount will be referred to negotiations. So that just basically means that if the dean or the vice president comes to a faculty member, again, whether it's full-time or part-time, right? If they go to a faculty member and says, hey, we really want you to do this. If it's less than 4 units worth right now, then the faculty member and the supervisor with mutual agreement can actually make a stipend happen. But if the faculty member is not comfortable with it or does not have mutual agreement, then it can go to negotiations, and the negotiating team will figure out what's a fair and reasonable compensation for the duties that are being proposed. The other thing too is the 4-unit threshold. If it goes more than 4 units, it also has to go to the negotiators to come up with a reasonable and fair compensation amount for those duties that are being proposed. Stipends awarded in that fashion. So if they are below 4 units and they are mutually agreed to, they can only go for a maximum of 6 quarters. And then at that point, it should be institutionalized. And so after 6 quarters, meaning basically 2 academic years, then they're not allowed to go through that method anymore, and it must be institutionalized through formal negotiations. Stipends greater than the limit established right there must go to negotiations. So if it goes more than 4 units, it has to go to negotiations. Okay, that rounds out Article 7. The rest of the articles are fairly quick. So let's go through the rest of those. Again, if anybody has to leave, that's no problem. We can catch up later. Article 8 is health and welfare benefits. Basically, right now, the health and welfare benefits are only for full-time employees, both faculty and staff, right, and administrators. And right now, it explicitly says a dollar amount, right? A dollar amount, which is tough because it's not a percentage. I would rather have a percentage in there right now, but with this dollar amount, the district is definitely in the advantage because every year the dollar amount, the cost of our insurance goes up. So because this is a dollar amount in there, they don't ever have to go up forever and ever, because anytime we want to make a change to it, both sides have to agree. So if both sides don't agree, it stays the way it is. So with the current situation right now, with an actual dollar amount listed in there, the faculty is at a disadvantage because we know 2 things. It doesn't ever have to change unless they are amenable for it to change, 1, and 2, every year that cost goes up. So we're going to be in less and less of an advantage, or more and more at a disadvantage every year this goes on like this, because 18,000 was great when it was first negotiated, right? But every year since then, this amount has been the same amount for years and years now. So every year that we go on and that dollar amount stays the same, there's a gap between how much they're putting towards benefits and how much benefits cost. So every year, then the amount that we have to contribute, or basically the amount that's taken out of our checks every year, is going up every year, right? And it's just we have to expect that every year that amount that's being taken out of our checks is going to be going up. So you can see the cap right there, $18,000 per year. And that's a lot. I don't want to just sneeze at that. It's a lot, but costs keep on going up beyond that. Excuse me. Article 9 is calendar, and this is the only paragraph in that article. It says right here: a proposal for the annual academic college calendar shall be developed by the administration and forwarded to the Faculty Association and the Academic Senate for review by January 15th. Well, for those of us that are in the Faculty Association and or the Academic Senate, we know that the district right now is out of contract. I don't think the Faculty Association has received a proposal from the district yet. And I would imagine that the Academic Senate then has not received one. And so we should have got one by January 15th. And I don't think we've got that yet. So technically or generally, they give those two bodies the proposed contract, and both bodies independently then will take a look at that. Now, this is one of the weird ones that Scott talked at the beginning of the hour about duties or issues that are Faculty Association duties and issues that are Academic Senate duties. Well, this is the one that is actually both, right? It has to be approved by the Academic Senate, and it has to be negotiated by the Faculty Association. So this one goes through both. So generally, it comes to both parties. The association waits and gets consultation from the Senate. Once the Senate passes it, then we negotiate it as a Faculty Association, right? So it's kind of one of those kind of weird ones, but it does have to go through both bodies. Leaves, Article 10, leaves. So there's a variety of leaves that are outlined in the contract. And here they are. I'm gonna give you just a quick overview of them. Here they are: sick leave, bereavement leave, industrial accident and illness leave, military leave, court appearance leave, personal necessity leave, catastrophic leave, family and medical leave, professional conferences, exchange teaching, and then the PDL, or the sabbatical, professional development. Those are all the leaves that are outlined and in language in the contract. So some of them are very infrequent and almost never used, and there's some of them that are used every year, and some of them that are probably used on a weekly basis by our faculty, right? So let's talk about sick leave. Sick leave is accumulated by both full-timers and part-timers and can be used by full-timers and part-timers, right? Full-time academic employees will be granted 1 day of sick leave per month of contract with full salary each year. So basically, we're on contract for the full-timers are on contract for 10 months of the year, so we get 10 sick days a year accumulated, right? Adjunct teaching academic employees will be entitled to 0.64 hours of sick leave credit for each weekly contact hour per quarter. So I haven't done the conversion on that, so I don't know. Like if you teach a 4-unit class, I don't know how many sick days you have by the end of it, by the end of a quarter. So I'd have to do that calculation. But full-time and adjunct teaching academic employees employed for the summer session may draw upon their academic accumulated sick leave during the summer session and will be entitled to 0.64 hours of sick leave for each weekly contact. So if you're a full-timer teaching in the summer, you do accumulate sick leave at the adjunct rate. Deductions for any person placed under a quarantine will be. So I thought this one was kind of interesting because this is very, very relevant to today. I kind of glossed over this one in the several times I've read the contract in the past, but this one caught my eye because of quarantine, right? So this is in the contract. Deductions for any person placed under quarantine will be made on the same basis as if the employee were ill. So if you are in a quarantine, even if you're not sick, you're using your sick time. So that's what it says currently in the contract. Bereavement leave, Bereavement leave with pay up to 3 days will be allowed for the death of an immediate family member. And I'm going to show you in just a minute what it defines what an immediate family member is. Up to 5 days will be allowed if out-of-state travel or travel beyond 300 miles on one way is required. Okay, so that's bereavement leave. Other leaves, I'm not going to get into it, but there is language for industrial accident and illness, military, leave for court appearance, and leave for exchange teaching. Those are pretty rare, but they are outlined in the contract. And if you want to talk about those, we can talk about those in more detail later. So let's talk about personal necessity, because I think it does affect all of us, and this happens on a regular basis, right? So employee may elect to draw on accumulated sick leave. So if you take a personal necessity day, it comes out of your sick leave, right? So this is like a subset of your sick leave. So you can use sick leave for sick days, or you can use sick leave for personal necessity leave. Now there's definitely some limits. So you can use up to a maximum of 7 personal necessity days in a school year for one or a combination of any of the following: death or illness of a family member or immediate family member, which requires presence of the employee; accident involving the employee or a family member; appearance in court, including personal business. Not more than 3 days each year may be used for academic employee without loss of pay for compelling personal business. Okay, so I want to bring this up because sometimes people confuse the difference between P&L, personal necessity leave, and compelling personal business. Compelling personal business are a subset of P&L. So again, we get sick leave. Of that sick leave, we can use 7 of those per personal necessity. Of those, we can use 3 a year for compelling personal business. Okay, it used to be 2. Several years ago, they increased that to 3. Okay, and so what compelling personal business is basically you just say, you know what, I've got compelling personal business. You do not have to give any reason beyond that. And sometimes I've gone on there to the instruction office and said, I'm going to use some compelling personal business. They're like, oh, what are you going to use it for? And you say, none of your business. I don't actually say that to them, but you have the right to say none of your business because it's technically none of their business. All you have to say is, I want to take a couple of days off for compelling personal business. Okay. At the discretion of the academic employee, you take 3 days off a year. If you got to leave for, that if you got to go take leave, let's say that you wanted to, you've already taken a couple of days off earlier in the year because you want to attend a family wedding or a friend's wedding. Again, that's not included in any other leaves. So you can take that as compelling personal business. You take 2 days off there. But then let's say all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, my nephew is going to graduate from high school and they asked me to come for that. Well, I want to take a couple of days off for that. You've only got 1 day left for compelling personal business. So if you take off that 4th day, they will dock your pay. Okay. You've only got 3 days of compelling personal business per year. If you go on to your 4th or 5th day, that will be docking and pay. Right. So just be aware of what the difference between compelling personal business, personal necessity, and sick. And so one is a subset of another, which is a subset of another. Okay.
When you say dock and pay, do you mean that you won't get paid or that they actually take out of your paycheck?
They take it out of your paycheck.
So
whatever your contract is. So for example, if for an adjunct instructor, if you're contracted to teach a 4-unit class and you meet 2 days a week, right? And let's say you take 2 days a week times 12 weeks is you're theoretically going to meet 24 times. And if you've already used your compelling personal business and you got to take one of those days off, they're going to take 1/24 of your pay away. So when they pay you, they're going to hold back 1/24 of your pay for that quarter.
Wow.
If you don't have any personal compelling business days left. So generally use those first. So, first of all, if you're sick, use your sick days first. If you're going to go to a funeral, use that. If you're going to take care of a loved one that's sick, use that. But then if you don't have any other good reason that's listed there, and you want to go to a wedding, or you want to go to a graduation, or you just want to go on vacation, whatever, it doesn't matter, right? If you want to do any of that and it's past your third compelling personal business day for that year, they will dock your pay the percentage of that which you missed.
Right. You won't get paid that percentage that you miss.
That percentage that you missed. You'll still get
Okay.
paid for the other part of that you did make, but your paycheck for that period will be minus 1/24th. Right? In that
Understood.
example that I gave that you were meeting twice a week.
Right. Understood.
Okay, so let's see. And advanced approval must be obtained from the Vice President of Academic Affairs, Student Services, for those personal necessity day leaves, right? So just try to get in ahead of time saying, hey, next week I'm going to take a compelling personal business day. Again, you don't have to tell them what it's for. All you have to do is say, I'm using one of my compelling personal business days. Personal necessity. This is some definition of what an immediate family member is. You can see it right there. It's listed. Academic employee who is absent for any reason not covered by educational code, the rules and regulations of LTCC, or the above section, or leave of necessity will be subjected to deduction of a full day's salary for each day of absence that the portion of that day's schedule relative to a full day salary. So for example, it does give you the option that if I'm supposed to be teaching 2 classes that day, and I miss one of those classes, that'll be 50% of one day that they'll deduct from my pay. So they will give you fractions of days if you miss one class out of 2 classes that you're supposed to meet that day. Now, if you're only supposed to meet with one class that day and you miss that one class, that's the whole day. Catastrophic leave. So this isn't so much about leave as it is about employees coming together to help each other out for banked sick leave. Okay, so let's just say that we have an employee that's only been around for a couple of years and only has, let's say 20 sick days leave, and they've used a couple of those days already. So they only have like 10 days left, right? And all of a sudden they have to have a major operation or surgery or cancer treatment or something like that, where they've got to miss a lot, right? And they don't have, and that newer employee it doesn't have to be a newer employee. I'm just the example I'm giving is a newer employee that hasn't had a chance to accumulate some of that sick leave, right? So the employees can get together, and we have across all groups, right? So it's across faculty, administration, classified, confidential, and directors have all come together and have created a bank. And so if you want to be part of this, you can donate a little bit of your sick time. If you donate it to this fund, if you will, then you have an option to, if you do have a catastrophic sick situation, you can draw on this. And it's not just based on what you've put in. If you put in a minimum amount, then you have access to the bank, right? There are limitations to it, but you have access to the bank. The intent of this bank is to provide additional financial protection to permanent employees during a period of prolonged illness or injury or hospitalization. So there's an enrollment period to get part of this program. It's between May 1st and July 15th. Once an employee becomes a participant in the catastrophic leave bank, he or she shall not be required to have to re-enroll every year. Once you enroll the first time, you're just part of that bank. Okay, family and medical leave. There's just one paragraph in the contract about it. It says right here, eligible faculty will be granted family and medical leave in accordance with the provisions. Later on, we'll define what eligible faculty are. So basically leaves to attend professional conferences. So if you're attending a professional conference or a meeting with your discipline, you will be granted leave from your duties for teaching at the college during those days that you're attending those conferences. So the last piece of leave is for professional development. And unfortunately, this applies only to full-time faculty members. So here's all the stipulations right here. Basically, all eligible employees are encouraged to apply for a PDL in accordance with the provisions of this agreement, and such applications for leave approved under this provisions will be granted. So it's basically saying that if you do everything you're supposed to in the contract, you will be granted leave after you've accumulated eligibility for it. So it's basically saying, more or less, you're going to be guaranteed a PDL or a sabbatical after 18 quarters of service. So there's it right there. Every 18 quarters, a full-time faculty member is eligible for a professional development leave. Okay. Individual may be granted professional development leave shall continue to receive all district benefits. So while you're on leave, you do get all of the stuff as if you were working full-time on campus. Work develops. So these are the little things about what's copyright or what's it called? What's the other word for it? Basically your rights.
Intellectual property.
There we go. I'm sorry. Yes. Intellectual property rights. Work developed directly related to PDL belongs to and is a property of the LTCC district. So if they pay you to go off and do a project, specifically to do that project, anything that you do on that project is the district's, and they can do whatever they want with it, right? That's their intellectual property since they paid you specifically to do that specific thing. Professional development leave. So this is a big one too that we have to be to make sure we're checking off the things so that we get our PDL and then we get credit for the quarters for PDL. PDL proposals should be submitted to the individual supervising administrator no later than November 15th of the academic year prior to that which leave is proposed to take place. So so for example, if I'm thinking about taking a sabbatical next school year, I had to have it in already this past November. So we need to make sure we look ahead. So when we're eligible for a PDL, when we're eligible for a sabbatical, make sure that you get in the proposal by November 15th of the preceding year. If you don't, now sometimes the administration will work with you, but if you don't, that gives them an excuse to not work with you on that. Okay. So I'm not saying that it's just game over if you don't get it in by November 15th, but now the district has an excuse to not go forward with it if you don't get it in by November 15th. There's a requirement that if you do take a PDL, you're required to come back and report about it. Okay, so reports of experiences or accomplishments shall be submitted to the vice president, and also employees returning for a PDL were required to present the results of the leave to the board, as well as 2 or more of the following: your own department, the academic senate, campuses as a whole, the community, or a group of students. Okay, so you're required to come back and report it to the vice president and at least a couple other those constituent groups right there. After completion of the leave, individuals must agree to return for a period of service equal to twice the period of leave. So if you take 1 quarter off, you're required to come back to the college for at least 2 quarters after the leave. Now that's different. A couple of years ago, it just got negotiated down because of Ed Code. And that's part of Ed Code that says if you take any leave, that you're required to come back for just twice the amount of leave that you took. So it used to be, though, that you were required to come back for 2 years after a PDL. So now that has changed. So it's now down to whatever you took. So if you took 1 quarter off, you're required to come back for at least 2 quarters after you come back. Okay. Let's see, what else is there? Okay, in the event an eligible employee elects to not submit an application for professional development leave, or final approval of a professional development leave is not granted in accordance with the provisions of the agreement, the employee may retain eligibility and may apply again in each of the following academic years. So if for some reason it didn't work out, that your proposal was that you didn't get the stuff in time, or that you didn't meet the criteria for the proposal, then you can reapply the next academic year as well. Such postponed year will not accrue towards eligibility for the subsequent leave. So if you didn't get your application in time, or the application didn't meet the criteria, those quarters don't count then for the next accrual of a PDL. Now, if you get all your stuff in and the application is approved, you can, let's see if it's, no, you can ask for it to be postponed with mutual agreement. If you do a mutual agreement that it's going to be postponed after you got approval and did all the dates correctly as far as getting stuff in, then with mutual approval, those quarters then can count for the next sabbatical. Okay, so there's a big distinction there. Okay, that's leaves. Evaluation. Yeah,
Hey, Mike, real quick, can I have a question?
for sure.
So you said the contract, is it calendar year, which is January to December, or is it school year, July to June? The contract. You said it was up in 3 years, which was 2022.
So it's at the end of 2022 school year, meaning that in June 30th of 2022 is the end of that contract.
So here's a question. I have one coming up fall of 2022. The question would be like the 2-year thing. I mean, the 2-quarter thing, you're off 1 quarter for sabbatical. You have to give back 2. How do we know if this will change, or we're hoping it stays the same, or you're saying because of Ed Code, it can't really go back to the 2-year thing?
So I think because of Ed Code, it's not going to go back to the 2-year thing.
Okay.
So I can't totally guarantee you that.
Okay.
But we did ask for clarification at the last negotiation meeting, and they clarified that it is because of Ed Code, it is twice the amount of time that you spent on leave.
Okay. So the new contract, this contract ends in June, so would it be under a new contract that fall? So hopefully it doesn't change.
Yeah, I can't imagine it'll change
Okay.
because since it is in Ed Code, I can't imagine it'll change.
Okay. All right.
Mike,
Great.
Yeah,
Mike,
JD.
I have a quick question too. Tim just got me thinking about this. Is there ever a situation with the contract that's similar to like the catalog? When a student enters the college under a certain catalog, that catalog that is respected until they graduate. Is there anything involving the contract where that would ever be the case, where you make an agreement or some kind of understanding under one contract, and then like Tim's idea, like if you're putting in the paperwork earlier and then the contract changes,
Right.
do they respect the contract before, or is there ever a situation where that occurs?
So I don't know for sure, but my interpretation of it is whatever the current contract is, that applies to everybody. And so let me give you a quick example of how it really can't be the other way. And for example, actually, no, I was reversed. I just don't think that I don't think it works like a catalog. I was thinking
Because to John's point, I'll be applying this coming November, thinking the following November, but I'm under the present contract, but it's going to be changing when it actually takes place. So if I get approved, after I put it in November, then does that contract, do I get approved under that contract?
Yeah, that it is. I don't know what the
Okay.
answer is technically, because it seems like you're going forward with a set of rules in mind, and you're
Yeah.
agreeing to a proposal and submitting a proposal based on rules that are set forth right now. And
Yeah.
if the rules change, you've already got that proposal in. So
Hmm.
it would be interesting. Let
You
me
make
look
an
into
argument.
that. Let me look into that.
Okay.
Yeah, Scott, do you have?
Yeah, no, so I would say there really isn't anything like catalog rights that I know of specific to the contract. Now, with the scenario that Tim's bringing up, because it's out of compliance with the law, right, we really couldn't do that because, Title V, that's state law. So if we're out of compliance, that just would never happen because we would say in negotiations, well, no. And I was one of 2 faculty who voted that down when the association years ago changed that to 2 years. It's the only time I voted no on the contract because I didn't realize it was out of compliance with Ed Code. But the only thing I could think of, something that would supersede or relate to this again, if it's something with the law, then obviously that would probably supersede our contract. There is a situation that relates to salary. So the law says that like if we do our salary advancement or replacements, if someone who came in after you got a raise, and I'm not relating it to like if they changed to 200 days or 214, but on a 177-day contract, if they got a raise and moved ahead of the schedule and you had been in the district longer, that's an example of something legal that couldn't happen. They would have to raise your salary as well. But I can't think of anything that's a grandfathered situation because things change all the time due to negotiations. And it's like the part-time thing. Unfortunately, if we did ever negotiate a part-time placement thing, we wouldn't go back and grandfather everyone. And all of us are in situations where we didn't get as much credit as we could have, or I often think like, I lost all those years of earnings because as a faculty member in my 5th or 6th or 7th year, in my lifetime earnings, I'm never going to get to the earnings, let's say, of a faculty member who was hired 2 years ago. And as if in their 5th year, they're going to be making a much higher salary. But so unfortunately, I can't think of grandfathering situations that you're talking about that would apply.
But it's an interesting question though, because at the time that you submit the proposal, you're working on certain rules. So from this situation, I wouldn't worry about it because it's an ed code. But I am interested to see if another situation where we did change the rules and somebody had already submitted to it yeah, I'm not sure. So I'll look into what happens when there's a change in rules when somebody's already committed to something. Mm-hmm. That's a good one. That's a good question.
All right. Okay. Thanks, Mike. I got to run.
Okay. All right. Bye, Tim. Then we got evaluation. There's evaluation frequency and evaluation procedures. So there's three different categories of evaluation frequency, and they're all listed in the contract right here, right? Full-timers have 2 different tiers and part-timers are all the same. For full-timers, tenured faculty members, I copied and pasted this, so there's a typo right there. It's not tenured facility, it should be tenured faculty. Regular tenured faculty shall be evaluated as required by law at least once every 3 years. Okay, so that's different between tenured faculty and what we call probationary or untenured faculty. Untenured faculty shall be evaluated at least once each academic year prior to March 1st, right? So that's the big difference between before you have tenure and after you get tenure. For adjunct faculty members have 2 timelines. Adjunct faculty members get evaluated within the first quarter of employment, and then after that, at least once every 9 quarters. So those are the frequency for all 3 types of faculty categories. Procedures. The procedures for a full-timer are evaluation team will be composed. Hi, Amber, you're back. Evaluation for procedures for full-timer, our evaluation team will be composed of peer evaluator and or supervising administrator and the faculty member to be evaluated. Forms A, B, C, or D, E, and F. Now, the reason that there's a C or D is because C is student evaluations and D is an evaluation form of either students or other employees for like a non-teaching faculty member. So C or D are both kind of like the people you deal with evaluation form, one situation or the other. Tenure faculty evaluations will alternate between comprehensive and focused, right? So every other one is focused, every other one is comprehensive. And really the only difference is during a comprehensive evaluation, Form F and a sample of course materials are to be prepared and completed by the faculty member and submitted to the peer evaluator. So we can look at Form F here in just a minute. Contract or tenure track, meaning people that don't have tenure yet, faculty will undergo a comprehensive every one of them. Okay, so your first 4 will be comprehensive, actually first 3. And then you get maybe first 4. is it 3 or 4? Okay. So I know after 4 years you get, but I'm not doing the math right. I don't know if it's the first 3 are comprehensive, and then you get tenure, or do you have to go through 4 and then get tenure? I'll have to double check that. So the first 3 or 4 are comprehensive, and then after that, it starts alternating. The process for a full-timer is pre-observation meeting, then observations, and then student evaluations, and then the evaluation write-up, and then the summary meeting, and then the evaluation materials and recommendations will be forwarded to the Vice President of Academic Affairs for review and signature before submission to the HR office to be put in your file. Okay, so that's the overall process for full-time. For part-timers, both of these are in Appendix 6. So both of these procedures are not actually in Article 11. And Article 11 just says see Appendix 6 for the procedures. So for a part-time faculty member, adjunct faculty member, the deans of instruction will assign a peer evaluator for adjunct faculty members from the list of interested full-time and Tier 2 faculty members eligible to conduct evaluations. So for part-timers, there's 2 types of peer evaluators, either full-timers or adjunct faculty that have made their way through the salary advancement to be a Tier 2 adjunct faculty, or what they call them, associate faculty, right? Those are the two pools of people that can evaluate an adjunct instructor. Now, they will request, generally it's not assigned, the full-time faculty members are not assigned. They request every quarter. The dean sent out a request for full-time faculty members to put themselves in the pool of evaluators, as well as the associate faculty member 2 adjunct faculty to be put in the pool. And then after they're put in the pool, again, the deans of instruction will assign a peer evaluator to you. For part-time faculty members, forms A, B, and C or D. So part-time evaluations do not include Form E or Form F. Those are only for full-time faculty evaluations. And again, C or D, C is the traditional one if you're a teaching faculty member and a student evaluations, and D is one for if you're working like as a counselor or non-teaching faculty member that deals with people other than students on a regular basis. The process for part-timers is similar. The instructor is notified. There's a pre-observation meeting. There's a class observation. Student evaluations are sent out. Then there's evaluation summary and write-up. There's a summary meeting. And then evaluation paperwork will be sent to the Vice President of Academic Affairs, the supervising dean, and the department lead for review. And then after that, those forms and documents will be sent to HR for your file. Grievance procedures. This is Article 12 now. Article 12 is grievance.
I think we just decided against that because we just thought it was going to be a really contentious sort of process to revise this. But I think, as anything else in the district, if we discover that all of a sudden, people are filing grievances or something or have concerns that aren't being addressed through normal channels of negotiations or sitting down with your supervisor, your dean, then we'd want to look at it. But I feel like we have so many things to address right now that this is maybe not low-hanging fruit, but it could be if situations change. I feel like now things are less contentious in the district in general. There are still issues that come up, but I think that's probably why we didn't pursue this back in the day, is my short answer.
And I have to agree, because the only time that I really read this stuff and gone through it is really prepared for this presentation. I was a little bit surprised and disappointed because, like you said, the final decision rests with the board, and it goes all the way up the chain of the district side of things. And it says, "Too bad, so sad." The board of trustees, whatever they decide, is the final decision. So, I mean, I can't even imagine why someone would ever agree to one of these sides being ultimately responsible for whatever happens. To me, there has to be a final a final chapter of this process that is an impartial body.
I was going to say, if we ever did go down that road of revising this is where we would bring in our CCA expertise to say what do other districts do, and what would be a process that would be more fair for the faculty member.
Yeah, I have to agree. So the grievance, the article just talks about what a grievance is. It asks, and I think this is reasonable too, though, that before you file an official grievance, you try to work it out, right? So I talk to my students that way as well. If you have an issue with me, if you have an issue with another instructor, try to work it out first before you take it to the next level, informally. And if you can't, then take it a little more formally. But so I like that part of it, that they try to take care of it informally. But if not, there's a formal grievance process, right? And so there's 5 levels to it. The first level 1 is there's stipulations about when it has to be in and what pieces to the grievance you need to put in there, right? Level 2, and that's supposed to go to your supervisor. And then level 2 is if you don't come to an agreement that you like, if you don't get a resolution you like, then you go to level 2. You appeal to the vice president. If you don't like the outcome of that, you go to level 3. You appeal to a hearing committee. If you don't like that, you appeal to the superintendent president. If you don't like that, you appeal to the board. And basically, at the end, it says the decision of the board shall be final and binding. Okay, so that's the grievance procedures. It's not used a whole bunch, but before it has to be used, really, I'd like to see if we can clean it up a little bit and get some type of person who's not part of the process making the final decision.
Can I just one other element, because years ago I served as, we used to appoint a position in the association. We don't anymore because times are less contentious. I was the grievance officer, if you will, and that was like the liaison sounding board before a grievance was taken to the formal level that Mike described. But some confusion would come up. There were situations where faculty members got in fights with other faculty members. And I had someone once say, I want to file a grievance against another faculty member. And I said, well, you can't do that because they're not your supervisor. So for stuff like that, if someone pisses you off, you have to just handle that through the normal interpersonal routes of communication. You cannot grieve against just anyone in the district. It is only your supervisor. So typically that would be the dean for most faculty in the district. There could be some exceptions.
And from what I read on this, a grievance is only if you think that you are being denied some of your rights from the contract.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
So we don't have any contract between each other about how we're going to treat each other as far as faculty members.
And it has to be the supervisor. So
yeah, exactly. Retirement incentives. So this will be a fairly quick one. There's eligibility criteria, insurance after retirement, reduced teaching load option, and service after retirement. Okay, so we do have retirement incentives that are on the books every year, and then there's some that are given even additional retirement incentives. So what we typically think of a retirement incentive, the district doesn't have an appetite for the traditional thing what we think of as a retirement incentive, but there are a couple retirement incentives for us that are on the books all the time. So one is you have to be eligible first for some of these benefits. You have to have 10 years of continuous full-time employment at the district to be eligible for some of these employment retirement incentives. You have to also be at least 55. And the retiree must request in writing the benefits described herein prior to the date of retirement or earlier if called for other section of the article. So here are some of them. Insurance. This is whether it's an incentive or just a nice thing for retiring from the district. But basically here it is. You get 5 years of health benefits after you retire from the district. Now, just the way they are right now. So if you cover right now a spouse or dependents, you get that for 5 years after. You get the same benefits that you get for 5 years after you retire. Now, one thing that there's a caveat to that is it will end if you start getting Medicare. So if you turn 65, all bets are off. So if you retire at 64, you only get 1 year of this additional benefits, and then they transition you to Medicare. If you retire at 60, you get 5 years, the full 5 years before you transition to Medicare. But you get 5 years until maximum you are 65 years old. Okay. Reduced teaching load option. So this is kind of nice as well for those full-time faculty members that are getting towards the twilight of their career, right, and want to try to start downshifting a little bit. You can take advantage of this. This is reduced teaching load. College faculty members may apply to earn full credit service for part-time teaching with the following provisions. Okay, so the faculty member must be at least 55. Faculty member must provide service for at least 24. So you have to be at least half-time. All right, JD, see you later. The faculty member must be at least half-time. So you could get reduced teaching load all the way down to 50% teaching load. You can't go lower than that. The employee must be paid, shall be paid at a salary that is pro rata share of the salary employee. So if you go down to 75% or 75% load, you get 75% of your salary. But there's a couple of things that are still nice about that, and that is you still get a full year of service as it relates to your salary step. You still get a full year of service as is related to STRS. You also get a from STRS perspective, even though you're only getting 75% of your salary, if you're 75%, the calculation that they do for your retirement is based on your total earnings for that year as if you worked 100%. So that's pretty nice. You also get full benefits, health benefits. So there's plenty of benefits from that. The only downside to it is you get less salary, but you do get all the other benefits and service credit as if you were working a full year. So that's pretty nice. A couple different stipulations about it. Once you start the program, you can be on the program for no more than 10 years. Okay, so once you start it, you get 10 years. That's maximum. Participation in the program may be revoked with the mutual consent of the faculty member in the district. So what this is talking about right here is, let's say you turn 55 and you say, you know what? I want to go to halftime. You go down to halftime and you can do halftime for 10 years. But you can't come back in 2 years and say, you know what? I want to go back to full-time. You could come back and say that, but the district does not have to allow you to come back any more than that. That's this mutual consent thing. Both parties have to consent to any changes to it. And this is understandable. Here's the reason why, right? If you come in at 55 and say, okay, I want to go to halftime, and you go down to halftime, and then 2 years later, you're like, no, I want to go back to full-time. Well, maybe they hired another full-time faculty member to replace the amount of time that you're going to be missing there, and now all of a sudden you're back to full-time. Well, how do they plan for that? Right? So basically it is, as soon as you start this program, both parties have to agree to make any changes to it. Okay. Let's see, the faculty member must inform the district by April 1st prior to the year of their intention to participate in the program. Faculty should submit to the administration a 3-year plan for reduced load and maintain a 3-year plan for subsequent years. So they just want to be able to plan. That's it's not a contract, this 3-year plan, but if you go on reduced teaching load, they just want to know your plan. What's your general idea of what you're going to be doing over the next 3 years? Once a faculty member begins the reduced teaching load program, the reduced teaching load cannot increase in subsequent years except for in the event of extenuating circumstances. The reduced teaching load cannot be increased. So again, that means you can't go from like 75% off down to 50% off. An employee on such leave shall receive health, dental, vision, and other insurance benefits as a full-time employee. Additionally, an employee on the reduced teaching load option shall receive the same number of sick days as a full-time employee. So even if you're 50%, you still get, for a full-timer, you still get 10 full sick days accumulated each year. That's pretty nice. Now, there is one piece of this that you have to be aware of. If you go down to 50%, let's just say I'm going to take a round number 50%. You still have to pay your STRS contribution as if you were 100% because you get a year of STRS credit, right? So it feels a little bit of a tough one because now you're at 50% salary, but you're still paying, I'm going to do round numbers, 10% of your full-time pay. So it's a little bit of a tough take to pay all of your STRS on only 50% of your salary. So just be aware that you do have to pay all of your STRS contribution, and the district has to pay your full STRS contribution during your reduced teaching load as well. Each year an employee is on reduced teaching load option will count as a full year of credit towards a step and towards 18 quarters for a sabbatical. That's pretty good too. Service after retirement. So this is just one paragraph in this section. It basically says this. There's some stipulations about STRS that you could come back and you can teach, but you can only teach so much if you've already been retired. Okay, this is actually after retirement. Now, this is beyond that. This is not the reduced teaching load anymore. This is after you've actually retired, you can only teach so much before your retirement is affected. There's a certain percentage we can look at that up in the ed code, but there's a certain percentage of load you can do every year and still get your retirement. Otherwise, you reach a certain criteria or a certain threshold, then they start taking away from your retirement. So just be aware of that. Layoffs. So layoffs, we got for protection for layoffs, right? Layoff procedures should be conducted with ed codes. There's certain things in ed code already laid out about how layoffs have to go down. There are service areas. Let me see if I skipped anything here first. Oh, layoffs are also in reverse order of seniority. So there's a faculty seniority list, right? And the most seniors at the top, the least seniors at the bottom. They can't lay off somebody higher in the list before they lay off you in the same faculty service area. Okay, so if you're in the same, you have the same minimum quals. If somebody has been here longer than you have to be required. Yeah, Amber, you're on the lower side of that seniority list, so you're on the chopping block first. There's faculty service areas that are kept in the instruction office. Faculty service areas, minimum qualifications, equivalencies, and disciplines are kept there. So we can always go reference those faculty service areas. The last I checked, we only have one faculty service area at the college. It includes all disciplines, right? But it's beyond that. It's also minimum qualifications and equivalencies by discipline. Let's see anything else about layoffs. I think that's it. So there is a faculty seniority list in one of the appendices of the contract. So if you ever want to see where you are on that list, oh my gosh, Scott Lucas, you're after retirements for this year. Scott Lucas, you're like 2 or 3.
Yeah, the funny thing was for my year, we had, there's only, am I the last person left? We had 4 in my class. And so we actually had to draw straws in HR. It was kind of silly, but if there was a tie, we would draw straws.
Yeah, drawing straws. That's an interesting one.
We did it. It was weird, but yeah.
So there, excuse me, there is a list though in the appendices of the contract. Article 15 is all about intellectual property rights. For the most part, if they pay you specifically to do something, they own it, or the district owns it. Beyond that, it's a shared thing if you're doing it as part of your job, and if you do it outside your job, you own it. Article 16 is personnel files. Not all that exciting here for Article 16. It basically just says there's a personnel file at the college in HR that has all the stuff about you. There's one official one in HR. Access to personnel files. So you see there's different ways that you can access your personnel files. Upon request, copies of materials in the employee's personnel file will be made available to the employee. Article 17 is negotiation procedures. I talked a little bit about negotiation procedures already, so we're not going to go too much into this, but they are outlined here in Article 17. Article 18 is notice, and this is all of it right here, except for the contract. So It talks a little bit about giving notice to each side. So when we want to give notice to the district, we have to do it in a formal way. When the district wants to give us notice as the faculty association, they have to do a certain way. And there are a list of addresses and contacts in the contract. And it's funny, they are all snail mail addresses at the college. Savings. This is the whole article right here on savings. If any provision of this agreement is held to be contrary to law by a court of competent jurisdiction, such provisions will not be deemed valid and subsisting except for the extent to permitted by law. So basically it says if anything that we did was in violation of a law in the contract, then the law supersedes it. Labor Management Council. I'm not going to go through the actual stuff here, but at the beginning I talked about MOUs. And MOUs are when there's a situation where we can't wait around for a TA to be ratified in the next contract. So when we do an MOU, it's not the negotiating team anymore. The negotiating team ceases to exist for a temporary period, and we call that group a Labor Management Council. So when we create an MOU, MOUs are created by the Labor Management Council, not the negotiating team. In our situation, it happens to be the same team, so it doesn't matter. It's just formally we have to say, okay, we're not in negotiations anymore. We are in Labor Management Council. Go. And then you negotiate it, and it becomes a memorandum of understanding instead of a tentative agreement. That's what a Labor Management Council is. And then Article 21 is basically a signature page. It says this is the agreement. Everybody agrees to follow this agreement, and has a signature of the superintendent president, and has a signature of the president of the association. And then there's appendices. There's academic calendar is one of the appendices. Full-time salary is one of the appendices. 200-day, 214-day adjunct faculty salary schedule. We already showed that. Appendix 6 is the evaluation procedure. I already covered that. These are some of the definitions we talked about. Definitions of what a full-time faculty member is. Definition of continuous employment. Definition of what composition classes are. Definition of those 2 workshops we talked about are. Appendix 8 is an evaluation form for one of those workshops. I don't want to. We don't need to talk about it now. Appendix 9 is a faculty seniority list. It's just a list of all the full-time faculty member and the year that they started. Appendix 10 is the department lead reassigned units proposal. I talked about we come up with a formula-based calculation. And so this has all the rationale and the formulas for determining department lead units, right? So I'm not going to show it right now, but again, it's based on a number of adjuncts, number of courses, lab contact hours, and facilities, and maybe a couple other things that go into that formula. Some of the other appendices, round out the appendices are agreements and memoranda. So those memorandums of understanding that weren't formally folded into the contract sometimes are listed in the appendices. And so we have agreements and memorandums of understanding in Appendix 11. Appendix 12 is placement on the salary schedule conversion. So about 4 or 5 years ago, we went over to a new salary schedule, and this was the plan on how to get people converted from one salary schedule to the other. And so I don't want to get into specifics about that, but that is in one of the appendices. Appendix 13 is another specific a memorandum of understanding on the reduced workload program, grandfather clause. Appendix 14 is a memorandum of understanding for education coordinator, distance education coordinator. That was Treva for a 200-day pilot year. Appendix 15 is memorandum of understanding for Scott's position, faculty chair of teaching and learning. Whoo-wee! We made it. That was a good one. So that is in a nutshell, or a lot of nutshells, the faculty contract. So, questions?
I mean, I have some questions just generally, but I have to go, and I'm sure everybody else is kind of tired. I wonder if we should think about, Mike, thank you. You somehow managed to show quite a bit of passion for that entire lightning round of really dry legalese. So I want to give you credit for that. I'm wondering if we could maybe down the road, it seems like just what I'm trying to say is people obviously are interested in this topic. There's a lot to cover. I'm wondering if we could have like a second version of this down the road, if you're willing to give us of your time.
For sure, yes. And then, a comment about that as well is that as a faculty association, we have a fairly brand new team this year compared to last year. And we were trying to get some things figured out first and navigate where we wanted to be and where we want to go. So typically we should have a faculty association meeting every quarter. So we did not have one last quarter. So I've had it on my list of things to do and it keeps on getting bumped down, but I will schedule a faculty association meeting. And during that time too, we'll have definitely plenty of time to do some questions and answers time. So I will get that on the book so that we have a faculty association meeting. And I believe you're a member, but I just want to make sure that I extend it. When we have faculty association meetings, everybody's invited, right? All faculty, whether you're a faculty association member or not, because we do collectively bargain for all faculty members. So
Does it include adjuncts?
Oh yes, for sure. It includes all. So when I send out my invitation, I'll send it to all faculty members or not, full-time, adjunct. Every faculty member is going to get the invitation. So hopefully within the next week or two, you'll see the invitation for the upcoming weeks.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent.
That was a great presentation.
All right. Thanks for the
Mike.
feedback, Solange.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mike. Really great to go through all this. And again, we'll have the video too as a reference, and people can ask questions at the next. I'm turning green again. I'm doing my voice.
So one of the things I really like about doing this, it really made me go through the entire contract. I mean, line by line, and
we see that
and understand it, and then pull out the pieces that I wanted to show and the pieces that aren't quite as, or a little more too much detail oriented for this. But it really made me go all the way through it, and I appreciate Scott taking this or suggesting this as a topic, and I think it was beneficial for me as much as it is for maybe some of the other people.
Well, none of us have time to be able to do what you did, and so we really appreciate you picking out the highlights and
Totally.
helping us get through it.
Excellent. All right.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, Mike, and thanks for everyone attending.
Yeah. Thank you.
Great job, everyone. Okay.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Okay, bye, Dr. Scott. Thank you.